got 2 minutes left. What are we going to do?
You're asking me because you chose awesome timing.
Don't say no, just sing. Okay. Child of the living God, made in the image of perfect love. All that I am, all I've been given to you, my God, I surrender. I surrender. Child of the living God, made in the image of perfect love. All that I am, all I've been given to you, my God, I surrender. I surrender. Maybe I have a better view of the clock.
I have
Just
a better view of
changed,
the
so-
clock. The clock just changed. It is 10:30. Good morning, Unity Church in Redmond. Time for our opening song. We are all friends here. We are all friends here. There are no strangers once you walk inside that door. We welcome you to linger in this family of love and hold you in our hearts the way you are. We are all friends here. There are no strangers once you walk inside that door. We welcome you to linger in this family of love and hold you in our hearts the way you are. We are all friends here and online too. There are no strangers once you walk inside that door. No, we welcome you to linger in this family of love and hold you in our hearts the way you are. One more time, and hold you in our hearts the way you are. And again, and hold you in our hearts the way you are. All right. I think it's Ken's turn now to do the blessing, or do I do
Let's
that?
do it.
All right.
Ready?
Ready.
We love you. We bless you. We appreciate you. And we behold the Christ in you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, what a blessing. And welcome, welcome. Boy, if this was a college class, I'd say, well, why don't you all just move forward a little bit? But, oh, well. Well, now is our time to, we've moved from the end of the service during the announcements, our gratitude. So we thought we would put it up earlier in the service. So what I'd like to do now is to see if there's anyone that would like to open our service with gratitude. Anyone like to say anything about how grateful they are? We'll start with Adam.
I'm grateful for unity in this community. I'm grateful for life as it is.
Penny.
I'm just grateful to get up out of bed and get here.
Well, I think after that one, we can just introduce our musicians. What more gratitude does there have to be is that we're here. Oh, what a blessing, what a blessing. Well, I guess, why don't we introduce Anton. Anton, to our guests that are outside in the Unity world on the internet, let me ask Anton to come forward.
We're grateful for this country that we live in.
Amen, amen. And for those people who don't know our singer today, it's Laura Berryhill. And she'll be
Hi, everyone.
leading us in prayer. And our speaker today is Andy Torkelson, so he'll be joining us also. So we give thanks. And now is the time of our service that will begin with an opening prayer. So if you're comfortable, close your eyes, rest in the chair. Oh, divine Spirit, we give thanks for this coming together, this oneness of spirit we hold for the highest and best as we open our hearts and open our minds to receive the gifts of Spirit. We are so thankful. We are so open to receive the prosperity and the healings that come forth. We are one in spirit, and we send that love out throughout the community, to our family and friends and to all those around us. For we are held in the divine wisdom and understanding of peace. So it is. Amen. And Diane, can I ask you to come forward and do our lighting? And Mary's going to do it for us.
Lighting the Christ candle. And Mary, would you do us the honors? And as Mary lights the candle, let's repeat this together. We light this candle to remind us that the light of Christ lives within each one of us. I am the light of Christ. And we have the Lord's Prayer next. That's the question. Would you like to sing it? We would love to hear you sing it.
We would be happy to. And of course, as you know, a lot of you know this older version of the Lord's Prayer, and you're welcome to sing along.
And I'll be grateful if I remember all these chords. Here we go.
You'll be fine.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever.
That was beautiful. And now we have a joy song. Is that? We'll just let Laura.
I'll do one with the whistles.
We've got a special one coming, a special
We're gonna
song.
sing to each other.
I heard something about whistles.
Thank you for being in the world.
Maybe not.
Okay, I have what I need here.
So we're going to invite you to sing to each other. We played the song enough.
So I think usually for the joy song we
Yes.
stand up if you feel able to do so, and we're going to ask that you turn to someone near you and sing to them. These words are very simple, and then we'll sing to each other across the room as a community.
I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world. I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world. I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world. I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world. I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world.
You can walk around and sing to each other.
I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world. I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world. I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world. I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world. I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world.
Give us some extra oomph.
I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world.
Virtual hugs.
I love you. I bless you. Thank you for being in the world.
Thank you, all of you, for being here and in the world.
Now to come forward and do our daily word. And it's hot.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, let's see. This is one of the daily words that I think helps me to think, anyway, about the challenges that we face every day. The word today is ease, E-A-S-E, ease. And repeat with me, please. Beholding God in every circumstance, helps me know ease. And I know that when things are really going well, I'm the most grateful, easy person in the world. But things don't always go that way. And this is asking us today that when things are a bit challenging, to find ease and God's love and understanding in those times, which is challenging for me to do sometimes. So it's easy for me to find God in the glory of a sunrise and in the laughter of children, and to feel God's love as I get together with friends or family. Wherever there is wonder, joy, or fellowship, God is surely present. I remember that God is just as surely present when my responsibilities feel overwhelming, when conflict arises in a relationship, or when it feels as though there isn't enough of what I need. If I begin to feel tense, fearful, or frustrated, I remember that wisdom, love, understanding, and strength, all of the divine qualities that live within me, are ready to help me handle any challenge. Assured by my awareness of God's presence, I move with ease and grace through whatever the day brings. These profound thoughts were inspired by Proverbs, 1st chapter, 33rd verse. Those who listen to me will be secure and will live at ease without dread of disaster.
O Divine Spirit, as we prepare for meditation, we relax and let go. We let go of the toils and tribulations of the day, and we rest in the energy of this sanctuary, the loving energy of Spirit. So as we prepare for the silence, we can feel that energy flowing in and through us. We can feel it manifesting in our lives. We can feel the spirit of who we truly are. So as we go into the silence, we turn to the indwelling Spirit and we rest in the divine knowledge of oneness. As we return to this time and this place, we bring with us that energy of who we are. We allow it to illumine our path as we walk this afternoon and the days ahead. We let it guide our tongue. We let it open our eyes so that we may see the joyous wonders that God has given to us. And we know that we are blessed as we are able to send that love, that energy, the healing power of prosperity and wellness out to everyone around us. We know that there are many that are falling short and feel lack in their lives. So to them, we send them special thoughts, prayers of love and harmony, prosperity, and health. So let's say their names together in this joyous sanctuary of love. Together. Marissa, Carl, Gail, Giselle, Kayla. And we know that all love flows first through ourselves. So let's place our name in this healing sanctuary together. All of these names are enfolded in the love and light, the energy of healing and prosperity. And we wrap them with all the prayers in our prayer box, all the prayers of silent unity. And we know thy will be done. Spirit, working in and through us, manifesting in our lives. For we are the manifestation of Spirit on earth. And so it is. Amen. And now I'm going to call on Anton and Laura to bring us some more beautiful music.
This is a song you'll probably know, and you're welcome to sing along with it as well. There won't be words, but you can sing along. In this moment, in this place, I remember
When I go inside and quiet my mind, I can hear Spirit gently say, there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. And I hear the voice of love. It is singing through my life. It is all I am, every part of me. It is all I choose to be. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. Thank you.
And now our speaker, Andy Torkelson, bringing his thoughts of light, love and light.
Morning. I want to thank you all for having me here. This is just such a lovely community. I love walking in here, and I can feel the energies of the many years this place has been here, so thank you. I was really caught up in that song, There Is Only Love. I'm speaking today about love, and it's been covered really well with all the music, especially this song, and I wasn't even going to start off this way until I heard that song, but now I'm going to start off this way. My father and I had an interesting relationship through the years, through our lives together, and we never really connected. My father wasn't a bad person, and I'm not a bad person. It's just that there was something about our personalities that just didn't sync, and I think the bottom line is we kind of didn't understand each other just in the way we were in the world. And there were times where I took that to places that I'm not proud of today, where I'd become very angry with him, and I have a very strong personality. I'm a big person. I have a strong personality. You put that together, that's fun, right? And so anyway. He had a lot of anger in him and everything, but he, I think that he was more restrained about it, and he struggled with going there in terms of his anger. And when I was younger, from my teens all the way up, from my teens all the way up through my 30s, I didn't have any problem going there, and I'm not proud of that today. But anyway, so things over the years didn't go so great. And so I began a journey in my middle 30s to heal my life in a lot of different ways. And that's a long story, but one of them was to heal my relationships and to show up in them differently. And so one of the relationships I really wanted to heal was between my dad and I, because, you know, I knew that I loved him and I knew that he loved me, and it was like, you know, this has to be better than it is. My dad worked in a world, my dad had very much an engineering mind, very linear thinking, mathematical. He worked for PG&E for 35 years, and in the hydroelectric end of PG&E, those powerhouses and stuff. And so he worked with complicated mathematic equations all the time. And that type of, I don't know how many of you are familiar with those hydroelectric plants that are on the rivers, but they're very complicated. And so he worked in that world, and he never really had much education, but if he had, I think he would have been an engineer. But that's just the way his mind worked, and I've spent my whole life working with people. And so I thought, you know, I'm the one who really needs to try and figure this out. And so I decided I was going to try and go into his world, and he ended up moving to Arizona and living there for a long time, and I would go down and visit him. And so my mission was to just slowly begin to let him know that he didn't have to be afraid of me in terms of a relationship, and we could open up and have a conversation. And so I went into his world a lot and asked him a lot about his background. My dad had a really rough background. He, you know, growing up, his mother took her own life when he was between 8 and 12 years old, somewhere in there, you know. And my grandfather, God bless him, he was more interested in playing cards and shooting pool than to raise a couple of kids after she was gone. So my dad was kind of taking care of his little brother, and he was trying to provide for himself. And so I got into that world with him, and I listened to him. And I found out some of what I would call, in the business I work in as a substance abuse counselor, we talk about core issues. And in metaphysics, we talk about consciousness. What are the things that, in terms of the challenges that we face, what is it within our consciousness that manifests these challenges? And so within his consciousness was all the stuff around this early trauma, and trying to take care of himself, and being raised in foster care, off and on sometimes, and sometimes those relationships in foster care were physically abusive, and it had to do with the times a lot, and it had to do with other people's unsolved stuff. And so I began to soften around him, and I began to understand him as best I could by going into his world. And so we worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And then my dad, in his early 80s, my dad he was in the world until his early 90s, but right around the end of the 70s and 80s, he developed a type of dementia. And so that started to happen. And so, I found that the work I would do with him went best when I was actually in his presence. He never really liked talking on the phone. He wasn't an email person, none of that stuff, you know. You know, he was the type of guy, you know, sit and see each other, and, you know. So when I would go down there, I'd work on this. Well, anyway, eventually the Alzheimer's, it began to escalate quicker than what I thought it would. And there came a point where he didn't know his loved ones, including me. And so I was going to head down and see him, and his wife told me, says, you know, Andy, he probably isn't going to know you. I said, okay, you know, that's fine. So I was, like a lot of us in these movements, we have ministers, we have counselors, we have practitioners, we have prayer partners, we have people we reach out to. And there was someone who I was working with, and what I love about this is the synchronicity of this is that the person I talked to, who I talked to a lot about other areas of my life, happened to be someone who knew a lot about dementia and how to deal with it from the standpoint of working with it. And it's just, there's no accidents there, right? So I'm talking to her, and I said, well, so how do I show up in this? Excuse me. And she said, Andy, go into his world. Don't expect him to be in your world. And don't correct him if he's wrong, because someone with dementia gets agitated about that, and it becomes uncomfortable, and it becomes unsafe. Not physically unsafe, but emotionally unsafe. to suddenly, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. That made sense to me. And no matter what he says, just go with it. It's fine. It's like, okay. So I went down there. Now this is where we go to the song, There's Only Love, right? We talk about the healing power of love. And so I went down there, and I came in the house, and his wife took me in and said, my dad's name is Floyd. Hey, Floyd, do you remember Andy? And Andy, I don't, and he looked at me, and I could tell by the look in his face he didn't know who I was. And I was going to be there for like 3 or 4 days, So, staying there, I mean, it's like a stranger comes in, and I get, it's like, what are you doing here? I'm going to be here for 4 days, So anyway, so we sat and I could tell, it's like being with a child, kind of not sure, kind of afraid, and it really touched my heart to see him like that. And so I just began to ask him about himself, and I didn't care what he said. I just, like, whatever he said, I would just go along with. And what I found out was that he eventually, it took about a half a day or so before he really kind of talked to me, and then he kind of became very chatty, which was really cool. And a lot of it didn't make a lot of sense, but he would say things to me like my mom passed away decades ago, a long time ago. I mean, God, now it's been over 40 years ago. My mom passed away. And so my mom's name was Evelyn, and so this one day he said to me, he goes, Did you know my wife, Evelyn? And so I said, no, I didn't know her. Tell me about her. So he told me about her. He shared all kinds of stuff about her that I had never known. Some of their early struggles, because when my mom married my dad, they had to move way up into the Feather River Canyon, because he was working in a powerhouse up there. It was very isolated. It was just railroad people and PG&E people. My mom came from a big family, and a big raucous family. They loved each other. And so all of a sudden she's up there, and he talked about that struggle and everything. And so anyway, he shared some anecdotes with me. And so he'd go along, and he'd say, hey, did you ever know? And he'd talk about his brother, which is my uncle. He talked about my sister. He talked about all kinds of people. And every time I'd say, no, I don't think I ever met them. Tell me about them. So he'd tell me. And I began to learn his perspective of things, because what was wonderful about about what he was going through, the dementia, was that he was giving a very stripped down, heartfelt version. It wasn't about facts and stuff. It wasn't about this happened, that happened. Sometimes in families we argue, no, that didn't happen. The car was red, it wasn't green, and who cares? It was just stripped down. And it was just so raw, and it was just such wonderful data, and it was heartfelt. And there were times he became emotional, even though he was kind of stoic. So I hung around there for a few days. And then this one day he said, did you ever know my son Andy? And I said, no, tell me about him. And what I found out was how much he loved Andy, and how much he cared for him, and how much he regretted that he had never found a way to communicate with him. And how I think that work he did was pretty good, but I didn't understand it. And I think that was really important to him, but I didn't understand what he was doing. I don't know what he was doing. There's only love. There's only love. When I first got involved in metaphysics, because I came from a hardcore fundamentalist born-again Christian background. That's what I was raised in. I was even educated in it formally for a while. And so it didn't work out for me, so I was, I made my way to metaphysics, which is I came up through religious science, and so religious science and unity are sister traditions. There was divine science and some others, and so I found religious science, and so religious science was this idea that God is not necessarily a human-looking individual, man, woman, old, on a throne, whatever. God is an energy, God is a force, God is creation. But like, and I've been listening, this whole service has been so beautiful, this idea. I know that our job is to kind of personalize God so that it allows us to work with it. That's the power of metaphor in our teaching. I love that. And I knew some people when I first got involved in metaphysics and religious science who actually kind of worked with the construct of going to the Father, going to the Mother, especially in meditations and things like that. And I appreciated that, but I was careful about that because I was really having a hard time moving from duality to unity. I love that this teaching is called unity. That's God, So I went to one of my teachers one time. I've taken classes forever. And I went to one of my teachers one time, a woman I really respected, a minister, and I said, I'm really struggling with this love thing because I get it, if love were a father or a mother or, someone I can see and we sit with them and we sit on their lap and they tell us things and they can hold us, and there's that warmth and that idea of they look after us and stuff. And I'm really having a hard time with the with the energy part of it, the creative energy. And she said, where you're going to have to find it, Andy, is in synchronicity. I want you to study synchronicity. And I said, okay. Seemed kind of weird. I mean, I knew the definition of synchronicity. It's when everything comes together so that, so that whatever I'm looking for and whatever you're looking for, and we come into the same realm, and somehow you've got a piece of it and I've got a piece of it, and we learn from each other. And we, all those pieces that come together to make something happen. Some traditions call them kismet or coincidence, and we don't really believe in that. We believe in synchronicity. I remember in one of my classes one time, they were talking about prayer and stuff, and like the universe and God doesn't care what you're praying for. It could be world peace, or it could be a really good parking place in front of the pharmacy because you're running late and it's raining and stuff. And so, it doesn't really matter. And so we talked about, we go into that affirmative type of prayer and stuff. And so we drive around the parking lot, the place is packed, and all of a sudden we come around at one moment and there's a car that comes out and moves, and we go right in and we're right by the front door. We go, oh my God. Well, then the class goes, okay, I want you to think about the synchronicity of that. What do you mean the synchronicity? I want you to think about what all the things that had to happen for that parking place to open up at that time. And I'm telling you, if you ever do an exercise like that, you could go back to when people are born. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like that. All of that comes together. Okay? It's like my dad and I. Someone who meant the world to me, to be my mentor, the person I go to, my practitioner, my prayer partner, my whatever. And she had a background in dementia. And she advised me, and I listened to her. I shut my mouth, I got my ego out of the way, and I went down there and I used what she shared with me, and it opened all that up. That's synchronicity. That's the love of Spirit for us. It's about everything showing up. In the early 20th century, I think it was in the 1930s, first came up with this idea of ecosystems. And ecosystems, basically, I'm going to give you a definition here, and this is from 1935. As a geographical area where plants, this is ecosystem. A geographical area where plants, animals, and other organisms, as well as weather and landscape, this is what's important, work together to form a bubble of life. Studying the interactions between organisms and other organisms and their environments as integrated systems. I was just down in Monterey recently, and one of my favorite historical figures is from the Monterey areas. I don't know how many of you have heard of him. His name is Ed Ricketts. He wrote a book called Between Pacific Tides. And he became famous because of John Steinbeck. If you ever read the book Cannery Row, the character Doc is based on Ed Ricketts. So, John Steinbeck, who grew up in Salinas, comes a few miles to Monterey, Cannery Row. He finds this biologist there, Ed Ricketts. And Ed Ricketts becomes his metaphysical guru. He wasn't trained by Unity, he wasn't trained by religious science, he was just this amazing person, into poetry, into science, into art. And he ran a biological laboratory where he harvested animals out of tide pools, and he provided them for universities for their marine biology classes. I read a biography on Ed Ricketts some years ago, and they talk about all those years of gazing down into tide pools. I don't know how many of you like tide pools or hang out with them, but you watch down there and you see all that life. The ecosystem, the interconnectedness. And the thing about tide pools is when you first look, it's like there ain't nothing down there but rocks and some kind of plants. But the more you look, the more you look, the more you look, the more you look, pretty soon you identify dozens, if not hundreds, of little things going on down there. A lot of it because they're camouflaged so well. Evolution, right? So Ed Ricketts would sit there, and scientists like him the world over, in the early part of the 20th century, in the 30s, said, wow, look at the dependence down there. Now, this is what's really interesting when you look at evolution, physical evolution. Some of those species evolved in different times. Some of them were thousands of years ahead of others. And yet they all come together to help each other. I began to think about that in terms of synchronicity. How the system that creates a tide pool, or the ecosystem. We look at it biologically, but is it a system of love? Do we find love in nature like that? Metaphysics, like when you get into the Tao is like the nature of things, right? Well, is part of the nature of things love? Like the song says, there is nothing but love. It binds, it holds, it heals. Listen to those words. It's all there. I want to tell you a story. This happened just recently, and I got permission to tell you this story. And actually, my getting permission to tell you this story is part of the story. Okay? Okay, so I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, and I work in outpatient. Right now, I got about between 10 and 15 clients I'm working with. Been working with a young woman for a long time, and she's Native American, and she gave me permission for this because I said, I'm going to be speaking one of these days, and I want to share your story. And she said, why? And I'm going to leave it right there because I'm going to come back to that in a moment. All right. So about 2 years ago, she's had an alcohol problem throughout her life, going back to a very young teenager. She's not an older person. She's in her 20s, late 20s, whatever. Been dealing with alcohol for a long time. About 2 years ago, she had a baby pass away with SIDS. Right around this time, 2 years ago. So she and I have been working together because that whole thing triggers her. The grief, everything. She's so triggered by that, and once that baby passed away, she just tanked in terms of her use of alcohol. Came into residential, did 90 days there. Now she's in outpatient for 90 days, right? Been really working on stuff. So anyway, I've been working with her, and I know she's Native American, and she's really into the Native American beliefs as best she can understand them because she's come from kind of an unhealthy background. And the reason I'm saying that is because, not all Native Americans are into those beliefs. It's like not all Asians are Buddhists, you know what I'm saying? So you don't want to take that for granted, but I happen to know that she's into the Native American beliefs. So on her forearm, on this arm here, right there, She has a beautiful tattoo of that baby. And that baby's name is Roman. And whoever the artist was took a photo and did this tattoo. So she walks around with this tattoo on her all the time, this beautiful tattoo. And all kinds of stuff trigger her around, his death. So one day, I was talking to her and I said, I want to boil this down. I want you to bottom line this for me. What is your greatest grief? I mean, it sounded like Captain Obvious, but what's your greatest level of grief about this? And she said, my baby's moved on, and who's there to take care of him? Or did he just vanish? Is he gone? And I loved him so much, and that typical thing. But who's there to take care of him? Who's there to take care of him? And I thought about that for a moment. And I said, I want to ask you a question. I said, do you have an ancestor practice? He said, well, I don't know if I have a practice, but I believe in that. I said, well, tell me what you believe about the ancestors. And she talked about how the ancestors are there to help us as guides, and they're powerful and they have wisdom. And while we can pray to the Creator, we can also at times pray to the ancestors. And sometimes they show up in dreams. And for other people, I mean, there are masters of that who maybe even actually see them, in the physical world, but mainly dreams and stuff. And they're there to let us know they love us and that we're on the right path, or they tell us where maybe we need to go in a different direction or think this through or whatever. So I said, well, how does someone become an ancestor? Well, they die. Okay. Like who? Who's an ancestor? Well, my grandma. My grandma died some years ago, and she comes to me in dreams. Okay. So I said, is Roman an ancestor? I don't know. I don't think so. Why not? He passed away. Why wouldn't he be an ancestor? I don't know, but I just think that he's probably not. And she's sitting across from me. Her arm is down. The tattoo's there. I said, is it possible that if you can see him as an ancestor, that he doesn't really look like this today? I guess so. So I said, so if he's an ancestor, do these ancestors need people to take care of him? No, not really. Sounds like their job is to kind of take care of you. Yeah? But how can Roman take care of me? He was a baby. I said, well, you also believe that in things like reincarnation and that life is eternal, right? Well, yeah, there's lifetimes. So is he really a baby? And so when we applied her own belief system, she began to loosen up. She began to see it in a shifted perspective. And she began to actually celebrate him, and like she would start to tell people good stories about him, and she could talk about him without crying and things like that. Now, this is the next part of the story. So about a week and a half ago, I'm at home before I go to work, and all of a sudden I get a phone call, and I can tell it's her on my phone. And so I say, hey, what's going on? And she's crying. She goes, Andy, I am just freaking out. I said, what's going on? And she works in an assisted living complex, and so it's a place that people live in apartments, and so her job is to, it's a self-contained unit for issues. I'm sure you all know what it's like. And her job, she works from 6 in the morning till noon every day. She goes in, she makes sure people are awake, she makes sure they have their medication, she talks to them, finds out what's going on, how do you feel? And so she went in this one morning, and there was a woman, and she loved this woman very dearly. This woman was always really sweet to her, and she called her name, and she was in a chair, and she didn't answer. And so she went over And she tried to get her attention and couldn't really tell, and so she touched her, and she realized that she had made her transition. And she said, so she's on the phone to me and says, "Oh my God, Andy," and he told me the whole thing. And she said, and when I touched her, her body was cold, and she said, that reminds me of Roman. Oh my God, when I picked up Roman that morning, he was so cold. And I said, okay, I said, we need to come back to your belief system. We need to come back to your belief system. I said, first of all, take a breath, come into your breath. What's your belief system? I said, the woman who you're talking about, where has she gone according to your belief system? What is going on with her? And so she regurgitated some of what we talked about. So I ended up talking to her about 45 minutes, kind of got her through it. She calmed down. So anyway, I went to work, and there's 3 days a week where I go in later because I do groups at 8 o'clock at night, or from 6 to 8 o'clock at night. So I get there maybe around 11 o'clock. Other days I go in earlier. But anyway, so I got there. I'm getting settled in. I got a couple clients coming through. And it was early afternoon. She gets off at 12 noon. And I looked at the phone, and I could see it was her. And so I said, "Hey, what's going on?" She goes, "Oh, my God." A totally different voice. "Oh, my God, Andy. I mean, the most amazing thing happened with Roman." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, no, when I was walking home from work," and she lives several blocks from where she works, when I was walking home from work, I was praying. I said, "Roman, if my beliefs are right, please give me a sign. I want to see a white butterfly." And so she went home, and she said that and looked around. There's no white butterflies anywhere. So she goes home, and she shares an apartment with a number of other women. And this one woman there on the back balcony, and she's talking about what happened at work and all this stuff. And she said they're sitting there in chairs looking at each other, and all of a sudden a white butterfly came through in between them. And she was elated. And I said, "Man," I said, "that is so cool." And my whole body's just like one big goosebump, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, she came to group that night, and she came in and she thanked me for how I showed up for her. And she was in my office. I said, "I want you to close the door." I said, "Is there any way that you would let me share that story?" And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, sometimes I do things on weekends, and I talk to people, and I want to share this story." And she said, "Well, why would you share this story? What's the point of the story?" And I said, "Well, synchronicity." And she goes, "What's that mean?" I said, "Well, synchronicity is when that the universe shows up for us to help us in terms of what we're doing, in terms of wisdom, information, love, whatever." And I said, and so and I said, it goes deeper than that. I said, like with you, I said, you were really struggling. You've been struggling with your baby. You've been struggling with this. Do you really believe this and all this stuff? And I said, I want you to think about this. This woman makes her transition on a morning where you come in and find her. And I said, then it triggers you to struggle with it. And then you put out a prayer, throw out a fleece, if you want to get biblical about it, about show me a sign. And I said, you were praying directly to Roman and you got the sign. I said, would any of that happen if you didn't work there, if the woman didn't pass away, if it wasn't this day, if someone else had found her, if she had lived for one more hour or whatever, would that have happened? And she said, no. I said, that's synchronicity. And she just started to cry. I said, this is how loved you are. And she's someone who comes from a tough background where, love wasn't really super obvious. I mean, to put it lightly, I could tell you some stories, right? But, we don't want to do that. She comes from a rough background. No, you're loved. You're loved. Because love is all there is. Just like all those dudes down in the tide pool, man, they got what they need. We have what we need if we can open up to it. The ultimate form of how loved we are is the way this universe shows up to us if we can open up to it. And I think it's really cool that today, because I speak around a little bit, and I'm speaking in a unity center because I love the word unity. What's more of a reflection of our unification with the universe than this concept of how it interacts with us? So forgive me, but I'm gonna pull some Ernest Holmes on you from the tradition I'm from. He said, "Please, dear friends, realize that your part as a spiritual practitioner is merely to accept fully that the creative law within you knows and performs every right action at the right time. That it synchronizes all impulses toward the desired event, realization, or understanding." Wow. That's really cool. And so because I am in the house of the Fillmores, I'm going to lay some Charles on you. Charles Fillmore said, "Love is powerful and spiritually, at its core, is the sustaining fabric within the most important aspects of life, all of life. We are imbued with all of life." I said, "You and Roman are not separate." I love the old school metaphysical term, the ether. You don't hear it much anymore. The ether, the definition of the old school metaphysicians, is like we're living in this force field of ether, you know? I used to love it when in the Disney world, when Tinkerbell would fly and you'd see all the little glitter and sparks around her. That's the ether, man. I love that. It's magical, it's mystical. You know, I like to think that we all have that around us. And on that day, she had that around her. And on the day that my dad asked me if I knew Andy, we had the ether around us, and we were guided and directed. I want to thank you for having me here, for being here. Thank you so much. Am I supposed to pray now? Okay.
Okay, this is the time of service when we share our treasures. I just want to say, at some point in time, I finally figured out what my purpose in life was, and that was to serve God. And each one of us are the feet, the hands, and the voice of God. And so we share our time, our treasures, and our talent. And so this is the time of the service to share our treasures. So ushers. And so we will say together, I want you to hold your offerings, thank you, in your hand, and we'll say this together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Abundance.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And why don't we do our congregation statement this morning? Oh, together, divine order is now manifesting in every phase of this ministry through its expanding prosperity, attendance, and by being a light on the path for others. And we are so blessed. And as all these great gratitudes and prosperity has come forward, we know that they will go forth into the blessing of this congregation and this community. And we are blessed, and so it is. Amen. You know, as you were speaking, one of the conversations that I had with Carolyn often, that we would talk about synchronicity and how it works. And we would always say that we wanted to see Sundays absolutely full. We wanted to have 60 or 70 people in here. And then we would always come back to, we're here to serve those that show up on Sunday. Because we know that 70 and 80 people are available to show up. It's just they're not meant to be here right now. They may be here next Sunday when you have something else to do. So we are so blessed to each and every one of you that makes this ministry possible. Thank you. And now I will move into our announcements. And our announcements include, first of all, thanking all of our volunteers. Everyone that serves during the week, does our sound, ushers for us. That's what makes the service possible. We also know that the office will be open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 10 to 4 this week. You can see me after church if you would like to hold anything in prayer. Also, we know that there is a prayer circle that meets at 9:30 on Sunday mornings, and that is with Diana, and they meet in the prayer room. So if you'd like to come early for prayer, that is also available to you. This week we will have a Course of Love, Course of Miracles, and a Way of the Heart, and you can check the bulletin board for times. Also, this week's 12-step programs that meet here, you can check also for their times. We have two special things coming up this week. The first thing is on Tuesday. We will be showing a film, and it will be Movie Fun in the Afternoon. And there are some flyers out in the Friendship Hall, and it is at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, and it's across the universe. If you haven't had a chance to see this, it's really good. So please join us for that. And on Thursday, we'll be celebrating Unity's World Day of Prayer. And that'll be from 12 until 5 in the afternoon. We'll open it up with a brief service. There'll be activities throughout the day and prayer, and then we'll be closing at 5 o'clock on Thursday. Diana?
I want to give a special opportunity to you, an idea. Thank you. Getting my stage directions over here. Thank you. We're going to have a demonstration. I say we, it's Lori's mastery class. And we're going to have a demonstration of how to pray without words. It's Unity World Day of Prayer. But to pray, you don't absolutely have to have words. Some people don't. They just don't. The words don't come up. And so we're going to talk about what is prayer. And basically, it's a conversation with God. And it can be done in many ways. And we're going to have 6 different stations that kind of activities set up that you can participate in just to kind of see what it's like. And maybe we'll be there to help guide you through it. So just a special invitation to all of you.
Thank you, Diana. Also, we are still looking for someone who is available to clean our sanctuary and our church building for us. So if you do know of anyone who is willing to clean, please pass on that need to them, and you can give them my telephone number. Also, let's see. We do have one other class that's coming up on the 21st. You might not be interested, but you might know somebody that does. And that's a Narcan class. Now, Narcan is the substance that you give somebody who is overdosed. And I was really surprised because 80% of all overdose actually happened on subscribed narcotics. So, you know, often we know somebody who is on prescribed narcotics. So if you know anyone that might be interested, we will have that on the 21st at 1 in the afternoon. Any other questions or sharing? Alex? Alex?
Okay. My birthday's coming up, so are you gonna do something on my birthday?
Well, you know, last week we celebrated all of September birthdays. So in October, the very first Sunday, we're going to sing Happy Birthday to you. And if there are no other comments, let us join together in our closing peace song.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as Creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
And also for anyone that would like to see Carolyn, she is going to be here for our World Day of Prayer. So if you want to stop in on Thursday and say hi to her, please do so. And now let's do our Lord's Prayer. The light of God surrounds us.
We are the light of God.
The love of God enfolds us.
We are the love of God.
The power of God protects us.
We embrace that power.
The presence of God watches over us.
We live our lives in God's presence.
Wherever we are, God is. And so it is. Amen.
Time for postlude music.